Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of Arthur's Roundtable. Thanks for joining in with us today. Super happy to have Brad, who has also joined the community in talking about his business in a prior Family Office Insights webinar. So we've gotten to get to know him a little bit. And I want to thank Dina, who is a friend and introduced us and is involved with Brad in this enterprise. Uh, Looking forward to evolving our discussion even further today, Brad, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate what you're doing because it's really quite interesting. So let's give everybody a little background about you and then how you got to do this and then what it's all about.
Yeah, great. Well, what a pleasure to be here, Arthur. Thank you for having
You
having
bet.
me on here, and it was great to do the presentation a couple of weeks ago as well. So in terms of my background, I think what's important here mostly because it leads into sort of what Invenium is I grew up in a family media business. So I literally grew up in the content and audience world, and how you sort of figure out who should get what sort of information or context and what is the best way to sort of do all of that. We covered everything from newspapers and radio stations and mobile and printing and magazines and experiences and what have you, and was a very influential media business in the New England area for almost 50 years.
Well,
So I learned the importance of this, the importance of um, understanding audiences, but also how to create extraordinary content, right? And that's really at the end of the day, once I left that business, I started a creative agency first because I felt that was
that makes
something I
sense. Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting, and we
Yeah.
had really amazing clients from Price Waterhouse and Mercedes to Bowers and Wilkins and Gannett, New Jersey, and again, it's content and audience and messaging. So this particular business, Invenium, which is what I started about 10 years ago, um, is really focused on working with iconic creators. We started in the music space, that's most of our clients, but has moved into athletes and brands and actors, and also very critically as it relates to your world, to family offices. Because at the end of the day, this what we do is we are trusted to go in to our clients' homes and warehouses and office areas and storage facilities and hard drives and all of that, take digital and physical possession often, do the archiving, the preservation, the digitization, content management, barcoding, etc. But then from there, we curate and we authenticate and we value. And critically, going back to kind of the media side, we capture stories, right, around these artifacts and moments. So whether you're a rock star looking to do a documentary or a digital museum or sell collectibles or do any of that, or you're a family office that wants to have everything preserved and protected for Gen 2s and Gen 3s and beyond, it's all the same process, right? And the same needs apply because at its most foundational level, a couple of things we say to clients is number one, bad things happen, right? So nobody expects the fires, the floods, the fraud, theft, right? This is something we're all sadly very aware of. And at the end of the day, if you don't control and protect your archive and your legacy and your artifacts, somebody else will. And that's not really a place that anybody should be.
Yeah. I'm thinking of in the context of have you seen Landman?
I have.
When Jerry Jones comes on in and
Yes,
tells the
I
guy on his
have.
deathbed that the most important thing he's ever done, and adds a little color to the story because the story was really interesting. That having his kids in the business, it struck me because we were in the middle of learning about your stuff while I was watching that episode. Is and this is going to sound like I'm being a bit of an asshole, but I'm sure Jerry Jones didn't do everything just right. And what happens when you go in and you find something that Jerry Jones or somebody didn't want you to find, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So, first of all, with that scene with Jerry Jones, I thought it was extraordinary. And it was
Epic.
genuine and
Yeah.
it was heartfelt and it
Yeah.
was emotional. And uh, I mean, and in as much of it was accurate, which I'm sure it was
Some
certainly
of
on
it
an
what had to
emotional
be,
level.
right? Yeah, yeah, right.
I mean, but you felt it, and I thought he was great. I mean,
Yeah,
really thought he was amazing.
yeah,
Um, and but I think to your point, no, whether it's Jerry Jones or it's a rock star, an athlete, no, not everybody has done everything,
yeah,
you know, the way they should, and we've dealt with everything you could really imagine from, especially with estates, things like that, where there's a lot of hidden things. But
yeah,
even look, let's be honest. I mean, some of our clients were, you know, and still are absolute global rock stars in the 80s and 90s. It was good to be a rock star
yeah,
back then, right? And I think
totally.
the photos, the information, the details, the documents that we have in our possession, there's a lot of things that should never and will never be released, but
Yeah,
they are preserved and protected for the client,
yeah,
right? It's part of the history, and I think it's again it so much of this gets back to the trust that our clients have in us, where if somebody looks on our website, there's nothing there,
right.
which
Yeah,
is intentional.
yeah,
We don't send press releases out. We're working with this client or that unless something is actually public and can be shown that it's public. We do not talk about it.
yeah,
And it's just that's the way we think things should be. So for Jerry, he's had an extraordinary career, obviously, and done amazing things. Yeah, there are secrets that are inside that family that should remain inside that family,
yeah,
but at the same time should be preserved.
yeah. Super interesting. I mean, I've been exposed to stuff that I wish I hadn't seen, but I can't unsee, um, just because of the where I traffic, right? But it would be super cool if like the only people that have plausible deniability in that from a legal perspective are attorneys, right? They're the ones that can claim client uh, uh, lawyer or attorney-client privilege type situation. So that'd be an interesting sort of caveat or trust or something like that. Anyway, I'm going off the rails here a little bit. Continue. Yeah.
No, no, no. I think it's a great point, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I mean, knock on wood, we've never been called to
Yeah.
testify or
Right.
with any sort of things like that. But I think at the end of the day, the important thing is that what we do for our clients. First and foremost, we have some clients where they just want things preserved, protected, and safe. They've had bad experiences. We've had clients whose homes have burned down. Bad things happen, so they just want everything safe. Other clients are, depending on where they are in their, career cycle or life cycle, and say, look, I just want to sell a bunch of things, or they might need money. They might be on their fourth divorce. They might, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
And again, we've seen it all. And we've had clients that we worked with and then they passed away. And
Yeah.
now we're working with the estate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, we have seen all of it and I don't say that in any kind of obnoxious way, but you sort of do this long enough, you really do sort of come across a lot of nuance.
Yeah. The thing that seemed cool to me about it, because in my world, I'm always dealing with fact patterns as opposed to uh, like a salesman selling something, right? It doesn't matter what it is. He's trying to find fact patterns that fit what he has, right? What you're doing is looking at the fact pattern and then helping based on what needs to get done. So it's customized in every sense of the way, right?
Yeah, so it's so some of the kind of fundamentals that we've seen, and there's variations with all this, of course, is that typically clients don't know where things are, what they have, what they're worth, and what to do with it. Some have more of a sense than others, and some are very clear. I want to do a documentary in 2 years, or I really want to do a museum, or it's an anniversary of a record, or what, and it's great, right? So, and we spend a lot of time on the creative process and the road mapping and the structure and what needs to be done when and all of that. And it's really almost never a linear process in terms of, okay, we're going to go into your warehouse and it's box one, shelf one, box two, shelf one, but
Right.
like
Yeah.
that's not how it works. It really is strategically what needs to be done,
Yeah.
right? So are there things deteriorating? What's the most valuable? What are your goals? And then we craft a strategy around that. So it is a sort of mix of custom, but also in a very replicable model, right? So this is not a sort of sexy marketing way to say this, but in a lot of ways we're sort of like a McDonald's. And again, this is not a really sexy way to talk about these types of things, but it's like we know exactly how to approach and deal with an athlete or an actor or a musician or a brand or a family
That makes
office.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a process there in
Yeah.
terms of what has to happen, the resources, and at consistently the level that you would expect. This is where the McDonald's thing would change because McDonald's has their own level of consistency, with it. For us, it must be at the absolute highest level because that's who we're dealing with.
Yeah. Can you is it fair to ask in that there's a certain approach for different types of clients? What you found is interesting between an athlete and a musician or some other celebrity type? Is there anything you can share with us that you found that's consistently, or not necessarily consistent, but interesting in dealing with one or the other?
Yeah, I think the so typically from a longevity standpoint, right? We are doing stuff and still doing things. So, Metallica is one of our clients. Metallica has been at this for 44 years. Okay. And
Talk
they are
about super fan band, right?
it's it's extraordinary. I
Yeah,
mean, they are truly extraordinary. And, I've seen some of the footage from their shows that they did last week in Virginia. I mean, sold out everywhere, extraordinary, playing at the absolute highest level, you know, people there, kids who are 5 years old to, 75 years old.
wild. Yeah,
So an athlete is not playing in their 60s, right? So, you have a much shorter span. Now, obviously, you have these extraordinary legacy, athletes who are icons, and we all know who those are. But there's a there's a stopping point with athletes where new content, new, stories.
you're not feeding the funnel, right? Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think the other thing that we've sort of seen, and some of my agency friends would back me up on this, is that I think artists tend to do a pretty good job overall connecting with fans and owning their fans. I use that term loosely. They're not great at it. We certainly help a lot in those areas. Athletes are typically not very good at all, right? So you could have, 50 million followers on Instagram. If you're an athlete, it doesn't actually mean you are connected with them. It doesn't mean you have a relationship with them. It just means they're in your orbit somewhere, and great, you can message and there'll be some sort of message. And I think part of our goal with clients, whether it's a rookie athlete or it's a legacy athlete, staying within the sports side of things, is to give them control, right, over their fan bases. Because if, as you move through your career and you get into your, 40s, where it's like you're probably done at this point, um, you have a relationship with your fan base that you own, again, sort of in quotes, but you own, and can, connect with, because that will drive future engagement, future revenue, future opportunities for you. So I think it is this getting clients to understand the power of legacy, and not legacy in an old sounding way, but
Yeah, yeah,
legacy,
yeah.
you're creating things that have asset value,
How to
right?
continue to keep those people interested? Is that what you're kind of getting at
Well, I
there?
think it's keep them interested, keep them engaged.
Engaged,
Or
yeah.
stories, you can sell things, you can do that. I mean, it's even for some of these rookie athletes that we talk to, it's like, look, you know, I mean, I'm in Boston, so I'll just say this, like, you just got drafted by the Celtics, you played your first game, don't take off your jersey and give it to somebody in the
Right.
stands.
Yeah, yeah.
Let us
Simple thing
help
like
you
that. Right. Yeah.
figure out how to preserve and protect. You might want to do it at some point, but let's really be thoughtful,
Yeah.
about how you build it. Um,
So this is interesting to me, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but what's traditionally been problematic with, on the one hand, it's good that Facebook and Instagram exist because it in and of itself creates reach because everybody has it. On on the other hand, they own your fans. You don't,
mhm.
by definition. And I've seen a few companies try to fix that problem by taking the super fan base and putting it on something that they own, the athlete or the
Yep.
superstar. Is that fixed itself yet, or is there a solution to that?
No, so it's and you're correct, and absolutely Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all I mean,
Yeah.
extraordinarily important for clients as part of their own ecosystem. But and there are plenty of fan club platform companies. There are ones lots that have tried and failed. There are lots, some that are better than others, some that sort of deliver on the promise, others that I think don't. And I think for us, this is where we are starting. Our starting point is always helping clients, what I said at the beginning, understand kind of what they have.
Yeah.
Like,
What's the
let's
asset,
understand
right?
it. Let's get
Yeah.
a hold of this.
Yeah.
Let's attach the stories. Let's think this through. And then let's use it almost as a magnet to pull these fans in into your own ecosystem. I use that word all the time, but it's
Yeah.
like, but that kind of thing, which can then easily connect in with some of these other threads, including fan club platforms or whatever. But let's give clients control over their world
Yeah.
because typically they don't. People throw things out. I mean, there's an athlete client that we're starting to work with, has an extraordinary sneaker collection. Not the only client we have that has an extraordinary sneaker collection. Things were stolen. Yeah, this happens.
Surprise,
Happens
surprise.
all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. And then from there, how do we use that to give you ownership over your collection, your stories, and things like that, and then pull the fans into your world?
Yeah. You find that people, like Tony Robbins says, a life worth living is one that's worth recording, or something like that, right? And do you find that these people are actually mindful from the beginning of keeping track of shit, or do they always think they were going to be something of that's worthy of legacy archives? You get my point. I'm not being very clear, but you
No,
know,
you're being clear.
yeah,
You're being very clear. The um I so I'm not sure we've come across a whole lot of clients that sort of said, right from the beginning, I knew I was going to be a superstar and this and that. Like, doesn't typically happen that way. I think most of them have tended to save things, not in a particularly good way. It's usually like, oh, my mom has a
a
lot of stuff
box in their
in the
attic.
garage
Yeah.
or a box, like
Yeah.
that's really what
Yeah.
it is. That's been very valuable. Some are much more conscious than others, of course, and others have thrown things out that are kind of heartbreaking. Um, but it's, when what we find pretty often is when we come in and start talking to clients, honestly, whether they work with us or not, but just to give them perspective, there's almost always an aha moment
Yeah.
where they just say, well, I didn't even realize that, or I didn't know I had that, or I didn't think this way, or I was going to go down this path, but maybe there's a bunch of other ways that we should look at it. And that's, I think, where we get a lot of satisfaction because we're bringing value to these clients and helping them just see things differently. And what we do see is that we have some clients who they don't think what they have saved in these boxes and all that has any value. They're like, well, who cares about this? And I would often say, like, look, I understand that you don't care about it because you lived through it, you created it, it's yours. But fans have never seen this. They've never seen your creative process. They've never seen the doodles that you did in the studio, or here's this guitar, here's this. And I said, it's a whole new world for them.
Yeah.
So I get it. You don't care, but your fans do. And what you want is, especially as all of our clients, whether they're athletes or, whomever, musicians, are like looking for new fans, right, to connect with them. So we also don't know what entry point a fan is going to come through.
Right. Yeah.
So it might be, oh, I saw this documentary, you know, and I didn't know who Bon Jovi was. I'm just making this up, right? Everybody knows who Bon Jovi is, but let's just say it's a 15-year-old kid who's like, I just stumbled on this. Then they go on a discovery process,
Yeah.
right? So it's the more things you have to offer and to pull them in, right? That in a lot of ways is the holy grail, where all of a sudden, you have a whole bunch of new fans who are discovering you and want to trace your history. So make your history available.
Yeah. Makes sense. I think it was almost 15 years ago, maybe more. Graham Nash had taken the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young handwritten lyrics that the band had accumulated over time and put it into this big fat book, copies of them, limited edition, and we're selling them. And so I met him in New York City at the Core Club. He was doing a promotion there, and it was like $3,000. But that was the first, as thinking back, the first real experience I had were, in my youth, the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, they were, couldn't have got better, right?
Yep.
Where, he was, 15 years ago, 20, 25 years older than I was, or whatever it was. So, the cynic in me said, okay, the guy needs money, he's monetizing this, but it was really super well done. Like, very, it obviously took a lot of thought and work to get it done. Is that kind of some of the stuff that you get involved in as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it is this, what do we have and what do we want to do with it? And different clients have different needs. So the types of super high-end books that, trace the history and, give fans insight, right, is really very magical. So for us, we've built digital museum experiences for fans to go in and see artifacts and stories and collectibles and history and all that. We've done that for a number of clients. We've done physical touring exhibits. We've done stationary museum exhibits. We've done collectibles. We've, been involved in 5 documentaries and 5 or 6 giant coffee table books, right? We sit there in this interesting place as sort of, almost, and again, this is not a cool marketing way to say this, but almost like IP managers and curators in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
That's like, okay, let us help you figure out how you want to share this content, but critically in a way that is authentically from you to your fans and also will protect and extend your brand. There are lots of very bad ways to do that
I bet.
and ways that devalue brand and devalue signatures and devalue all that. For us, we see really over and over again is that if we can make this link between the client and their artifacts and stories and all that directly into fan, the fan is happy and the fan is willing to pay for that because it is special. You're not, all due respect to eBay or collectible sites, you're not buying it off of there. You're getting it directly from the client.
Which I think most people won't delude themselves into thinking that the thing they got off of eBay had provenance and was authentic. Like that's a stretch, right? I think most people would appreciate knowing that something's been authenticated
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a fraud
everywhere. Yeah, of
everywhere.
course.
I
Yeah,
mean, literally everywhere.
yeah.
And eBay obviously has their program and policies, and I think they check things or whatever. But look,
That
there
ain't
there are
impossible.
bad people across the board. For
Yeah,
us, we can guarantee for sure that what you're getting is absolutely legitimate because we took it directly from the client and we
yeah.
can document it. And there's a lot of companies, most companies that actually can't do that, right? Because we're deep inside the client's world and deep inside literally physically, a lot of cases, their warehouses or their basements or their whatever. We are taking these things, right? And then putting it together in a way that again protects and preserves everything, and then kind of figure out what they want to do. So um, and it's good for fans. I mean, this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is the thing. And again, like even something that has nothing to do with fan engagement, but just the documentation side of it is on the family office things where, okay, you're not doing collectibles, you're not doing, whatever, but it's like your wine collection, your art collection, the history of your family. You want to do a course at Harvard Business School. Okay, well, you need to have all these things pulled together and all those things and the
Yeah.
stories that go along with it. It's all part of the same foundation,
Yeah.
right? You know what you have and you can figure out what to do with it. It's a command of the obvious statement, but some of it really is that obvious.
It also seems like biographies, right? There's tons of work that has to go into having an authentic biography or autobiography, right? So
Mhm.
can you imagine that? Well, you don't have to imagine it. You probably live it, right? The difference between having to be a writer and a journalist and dig through all that crap, and then you've already got it all categorized. Then you can
Yes.
just serve it up and say, here it is, and this is authenticated, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and we work with clients who have done books in addition to films and all of that. And we work really well with those, whether it's an author or a publisher or, or filmmaker, because we have done all the work that they need for them to do their art,
yeah,
with this and to do this in the right way. And I think for our team, on the archival and curation side, I mean, I know because I've just seen it so many times now, they feel, as they should, such a enormous sense of pride when, a filmmaker will say, we're trying to find this particular story, this particular clip. Do you have it? And they're like, we got it,
yeah.
because we've done the work.
Wow,
And it
yeah.
just makes things infinitely easier, which again benefits our clients and reinforces the trust that we have with them, where it's, yeah, we actually can make sure you have what you need so you can do what you want to do.
So we talked about this before we hit the record button, but a little bit. But it seems to me, and just it's my temperament. Let's just say that I recognize that that sort of minutia and getting all that cataloged and organized is such a daunting task in my mind. Like, how do you deal with that, right? Just people?
Well, yeah, I mean, so most clients have varying degrees of overwhelmment when, you know, which is why a lot of them don't do it and don't do it for years and years and years. And, it's expensive to go backwards, right?
Yeah,
It is. So our first thing really, and it is through people, but it's from a business standpoint, again, going back to the McDonald's thing, it's like we're really clear on, how we manage costs here effectively for our clients. Um, is let's just give our clients first a sense of calmness, right? And it's like, and for us to be able to say, we got you,
yeah.
we've done this before,
We know how to do this. Yeah,
you know how to do this. One of the things that I'll sort of joke with clients sometimes is when they sort of go through and we have this warehouse, we have this and hard drives or whatever. And I'll say, look, you're actually not that special. And then I'll stop and be like, you are special, you're very special, but
right.
you're not special in this
Your
sense.
problem isn't
Right.
necessarily, you're not the only one with this problem. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So, and once and very, very quickly, I mean, really, I would say within the matter of the first, week or two, we have begun to put some structure into place with how we do this. And our goal is always how to remove the vast majority of heavy lifting from our clients and their managers or the families or whatever, because nobody really has the time to do this. That's not
yeah,
what they want to focus on. For us, it's like, we will put this together. We will figure this out very methodically. We got it. We just need access.
yeah,
And every day you're going to see where we're at.
yeah,
And if we have a question, we'll ask you, but we'll be very, careful about that. And I think the other thing is that sometimes people say, well, and again, could be a family, could be an athlete or an artist or a brand or whatever, is well, we have an archivist. Great.
It's got to be helpful, right? Yeah.
We're not trying to take
Yeah.
anybody's jobs. That's not it. But again, we've seen this 100% of the time. We say to a client, we talk to their archivist and say, look, we're like an offensive line for you. We are here to support you and to do all these things that you don't have time to do because you're focused on certain goals or initiatives or whatever. And they love that,
Yeah, I bet.
because again, we are working for them, right?
Yeah.
They are part of the client. So we've had that experience many times, um and I th and being very transparent. Sometimes initially, a client, if they have an archivist, they might be a little
Pushback. Yeah.
skittish just for a second, and
Yeah.
it's like, this is how we work. This is it. We are here to support you, and we've had such great experiences. But the goal always, first and foremost, is okay. Take a deep breath. We got you.
Yeah.
It will be okay. We've done this before. This is how we're going to do it, and are very fluid with how we manage their needs as they evolve, because they will evolve.
So what does an archivist do, for example, for a musician? Is that typically where you find them, or is it nothing typical?
Can you
I'm trying to
clarify
figure
that a little
out
bit?
what an archivist doesn't do that you do.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You mean an in-house archivist? Yeah.
Yeah.
So typically, so if you can imagine, which I'm sure you can, so imagine an artist, or an athlete for that matter, but let's just stay with artists, that's has a 40-year career, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of artifacts, digital and physical. There is no way on the planet one person
Yeah.
can do all of that.
Yeah.
So typically, an archivist will be tasked with, hey, can you go find these things? Because we want to put them out on tour as new merch or on a backdrop for, what's happening, you know, this summer. Okay, that in and of itself is a huge initiative, but an individual archivist, certainly if they know the band well, which they always do, can do all that. But then if it's like, oh yeah, well, can you go back and sort of 20 years ago and we had this and we had this tape library and we had all these photos and then there was this, record label thing that we did and we really want to figure out, like, it can't be done.
Yeah.
Right. There's no way to. So we come in and we go, great, do what you need to do on the tour. We'll find more stuff to support you so you have what you need. In the meantime, we're also going to deal with all these other things and make sure you have that as well, and the band and management. So it really is a collaborative
Yeah.
side of things. And, and again, the vast majority of clients we're dealing with, even if they're young athletes, if an athlete is 38 years old, they've still got, it's still, 20 years, you
Stuff.
know,
Yeah.
so it's a lot.
Yeah. Do people, is it fair to ask when somebody might employ an archivist? It is a certain level of success, certain time frame, could be any of the above.
Um, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure there's any typical answer. I think, a lot of things now are born digital, which is good
True.
and bad. It's good
Yeah.
because it's born digital. It's bad because it just means that there's terabytes of data
Yeah.
that is accumulating. And if you don't sort of keep up with it, you got a client that's doing 50 shows or whatever, there's a lot of stuff that comes with that. Um, I think for us, some we don't get asked this as often as we used to, but sometimes people would sort of make the assumption that, okay, so after clients had like a 30 or 40-year career, that's when they would talk to somebody like you. And I'd say, nope, that's actually not correct at all,
Yeah.
right? If, a client is, you know, starting to get some traction and starting to see that these things are happening and starting to build audience, this is the time to do it. It's like the
Totally.
rookie athlete, first game, that first jersey, that tape, that thing, whatever. It's all valuable. You're not going to turn around and sell it tomorrow,
Right.
but it's valuable to kind of understand, legacy 101. So whether it's working with a company like ours who can sort of do this pretty seamlessly, or it's hiring an individual archivist, it's expensive to go backwards.
I imagine that a fair amount of interest is in your business has been catalyzed by what is it called? Name recognition. What is it called? With the
NIL, name,
yeah,
image,
and
and
I know.
likeness.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. Because there's value, which we've seen, right? You've seen the catalog acquirers or NIL acquirers or people like that. And this we for our business, it's the entire value chain of we're digging through a client's closet all the way through to how do you engage and monetize and sell your artifacts, which ties in with NIL, and all of that. And obviously we talk about NIL in terms of, college athletes and how that's all, sort of evolving and continuing to evolve at sort of interesting, paces. But it's the really key part of it, you can see it's a recurring theme, is that this is all, on a very surgical, non-marketing way to say it, this is all about asset, right? This is asset value. It's archives, it's stories, it's artifacts, it's things like that. But at the end of the day, you built a career, or you're building a career that is creating value,
yeah.
right, across physical, digital, NIL, all of that. How do you make sure you have control over it?
So we did talk about the preponderance of your businesses from word of mouth. It seems natural to me that business managers would be a good spot. Has it turned out to be that way?
Yeah. Business managers are a really good connection point for us. The managers themselves and management firms are very good. The artists are themselves, and then agents and lawyers.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality, and this sounds like a really obnoxious thing to say, and I don't mean it this way at all, but everybody needs what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said this to the agents,
Some
whatever.
one way or
All
another,
of
good or
all of your
bad,
clients
or
need this.
yeah,
They all need it,
yeah.
whether it's protected from, you know, a bad thing happening, like the fire in LA or whatever, whether it's that or it's
Organizing.
organizing or
Yeah,
storytelling or
yeah,
documentaries or selling or whatever. They all need what we do.
yeah. Is there, what type of pushback do you get? Is it just about money and time?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's there is obviously a cost for us to do this.
Yeah, right.
Is right. I mean, sometimes we will do things where, maybe there's no cost up front or minimal or whatever, but that has to be with a very, very clear initiative and focus on monetization. Um, but and sort of that kind of opportunity, because it's for us, we have very, very skilled professionals with all master's level degrees. And I mean, it's just like the work, the intake, the content in part of it, is very specialized. Not anybody can just go do it. Nor should everybody want to go do it, because it's a huge amount of work, and it does take a very special and you know focused, detail oriented mind to do these types of things. So I think sometimes it's a question around cost. Um, Sometimes it's where does this sort of line up with other initiatives, like they're going out on tour or they're in the middle of the playoffs or whatever it is,
Yeah,
like it's going to be most important. It may not be most important,
yeah,
but I would say that after the LA fires,
yeah,
a lot of people were, and have been reaching out to us, because it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the playoffs or in the middle of a world tour or whatever, your house is gone.
yeah,
And it's just, and it's just absolutely tragic. And we had one client who a really good relationship with, and we've been trying to figure out what to do with them. And after the LA fires, they called and said, we have to figure out what to do with these tapes, because if the fire had jumped one more canyon, all of these would have been gone.
yeah. Wild.
And it's like, so I think there's there's it's to work with us, on the preservation or making sure things are safe or doing all that, type of things is pretty short money versus it's all gone,
Yeah.
you know.
How do you value that? So, are there valuation experts that you bring in, like real estate or that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, and again, we've dealt with, we've dealt with estates, we've dealt with clients that have become estates, we've dealt with, younger and older and different genres or whatever. So, if it's when we've dealt with things where, okay, this needs to be appraised for because it's going to be sold. Well, in that case, you obviously have a higher appraisal, or we need this for insurance purposes or, estate tax purposes. Well, may not
Yeah.
want it to be as high or whatever. So how do you do that? So we do help clients with that as well. At the same time of same thing as I want to sell this guitar, I want to sell this thing. Okay, well, let's look at where things are in the market, right? And we have our own expertise,
Like comps,
yeah,
right?
we look at comps. And then I think, what's interesting, and we do see this is, and probably not surprising, is also managing expectations.
Hmm.
Because, we've had clients who say, well, this guitar should sell for $3 million. Right? I mean, I did have a client say that to me. And it's, again, we are trusted, right? So sometimes the truth is not always, what a client wants to hear, but they need to hear. And I did say in a much nicer way than I'm going to say this now, is I said that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And if that's what your number is and you're not going to sell it for any
Uh,
less than that, then you should
uh,
just hold on to the
yeah,
guitar
hold on to it. Yeah. Yeah.
because you will be disappointed,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm imagining it's like it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and there's only so much promotion you can uh, push on something to increase its, you know, ticket value. But
Yeah, there's the inherent value of the thing itself, right? So, a 74 Stratocaster, might be worth $8,000 or something like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
just as is. But if someone says, "Oh, this is the '74 Stratocaster that Stevie Ray Vaughan played on," blah blah blah, whatever,
yeah,
well, you know, maybe it's worth $1 million.
yeah.
But the value of the guitar itself is not
No,
that.
not
It has
that
to be
for
the
sure.
collector. And there are we've seen this, I've had conversations. There's a really, really famous guitar buyer and seller. I mean, the greatest of the great used him, and I spoke with him, over the past with things. Said, "What about this guitar?" And I'd be like, "This was used on this," and he said flat out, "He's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
All I care is like, what is this worth? Your guitar is worth $8,000." Okay, so it's like, okay, and just not interested. Whereas others who are acquirers, and there are some who are very well known acquirers who literally just want to own it because it was used on XYZ, they will pay the $1 million.
that's an art collector, right? That's somebody who
Yeah,
loves Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix and just wants to put it up on his wall because he gets pleasure out of it and he can brag that he has it, right?
correct. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It. And that,
so,
and something that's great. We all have that. This is that football. This is that
yeah,
jersey. This is that guitar. Great. This becomes part of your identity,
yeah,
right? So you're willing to pay to reinforce
yeah,
that sense of
yeah.
identity.
Almost doesn't matter what the price is, right?
Yeah,
At some point,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Uh, part of what I was getting at in terms of valuation of tapes that you mentioned that
Oh,
your
okay.
client had, like the ultimate monetization of those tapes is amorphous. Like you don't even know, right? Like if they're going to be used in a documentary, if you're going to spin them out in a new record because they've never been seen before. Uh, um, I was with somebody that I mentioned before our call, and I won't drop the name now because it's just not nice. We watched a video in his studio in his home that never been released, right? I mean, it was a whole movie they made and they just decided not to release it.
Yeah.
So what's that worth, right?
Yeah. It's worth a lot.
Yeah.
It's worth a lot. And again, that's where we sit there and we sort of say, okay, look, we found these things, these never before seen or never before heard, or the demos or this or whatever it is, the behind the scenes, the special story and scarcity, right? These sort of three S's that we talk about with clients and sort of say, okay, are you interested in doing something with this? Okay, you are. All right, then let's figure out what is the best way to do this, right?
Yeah.
What is going to extend and protect your brand and obviously drive revenue, for you and all that because it requires thought. There are right ways to do this and wrong ways to do this. And for us, we I think have a reputation again through sometimes with these, difficult conversations to say to clients, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And here's why, and here's what I think you should do instead. You may
Yeah.
decide to do it this way, but just
Yeah.
just need to share this with you.
Yeah. In that you've got media background, at least you can, I shouldn't say it that way. You have the currency of being able to make a contribution about with that experience to have some idea what things are likely to work as opposed not to work, even though the consumer is a moving target, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's at the very least, between myself and we have really, really extraordinary people on our team who are all employees. We don't have contractors. We don't do it like everybody is all in, especially because of the nature of the stuff we're dealing with, the people we work with. Um, we have a lot of experience just across the board to be able to say, well, sure, I've done a 3-day music festival. I know exactly what's involved with that, or we've sold things to this, or we've done auctions, or we've done whatever. So we can bring that collective experience to the discussion with the client because it's relevant context,
Yeah.
right? And it's not like, oh, I don't know. I mean, this could work. It's like, well, based on my experience, here's what I think,
Yeah.
right? And let's drill down and ask a few more questions before we just decide on something. And the first answer might be the right answer, but part of our value is that we can say to clients, all right, well, you don't just have one option here, you got 5 options.
Yeah.
Let's really look at those.
Yeah. Critical, good for you because I think critical thinking is at a shortage these days
Yeah, well,
in many
critical.
things. It's
Yeah, well,
it's
that's
an
that's a
editorial
that's a
comment.
podcast for another day, but yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
So let's talk a little bit more about what you see, and I know it's a nascent silo or channel for you. What type of feedback are you getting in the family office space as it relates to what are you finding people interested in doing uh, in that regard?
Yeah, so I mean, we've gotten some really interesting inquiries because people have seen or heard about us, and we're dealing with extremely high profile clients, so they know that we have the credibility, right? We're not
Yeah.
just a bunch of kids in a garage that want to get our hands on a family office, legacy and whatever. We actually know what we're doing and have done it and super served at the truly highest level, for iconic clients. And I think the recurring theme is again very consistent with a rock star or an athlete is they don't understand what they have. They don't have a central place where everybody in the family can say, oh, do we have this art piece? Do we have this bottle of wine? Do we have this document from the great grandfather? Do we have this recording? Do we have... Because the answer is typically no. I mean, things like wine collections, usually there's somebody there who's handling that, but not in a place where if you're a member of the family, I'm a member of the family, we can go in and actually really see all these things and how they relate to each other. Oh, here's the bottle of wine that goes with the original poster from when we, whatever,
Went to
doesn't
Italy, whatever.
or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
catalog or,
yeah, yeah,
that sort of thing. So I think being able to have access, thorough contextual knowledge, and especially the stories. And we do stress this with our clients, the same thing we do with, we have an artist who's two artists actually who are in their 80s. Like, we need your stories now.
yeah, yeah. Hurry
And
up.
you've
Yeah,
got the patriarch or matriarch of the families who are in their 80s. Let's get these stories. Do you remember this photograph? Tell us about this. And we spend that time to pull it in because Gen 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, if you don't get it, You're not going to get it. And it could be such a critical part of your history that, maybe a family wants to do an exhibit or at the New York Public Library. I mean, who knows, right?
Right.
There's lots of things like that, but it all starts from the same place. Let us help you get control over it, and we will do it at the absolute highest level, of course. And there's nothing we haven't worked with, So photographs, documents, apparel, instruments, everything. Like we literally have dealt with all of it.
Seems to me like aside from the artifacts and the stuff, that some of these people have lived extraordinary lives, meaning serendipity, luck, education, hard work, all kinds of things. And it happens so fast that, by the time it was a blink, right?
Mm.
But lots of stuff happened, and I see you smiling and I know these stories and uh, know a lot of these people well enough to know the ins and outs. It's really extraordinary. When somebody young sees somebody that's had great success that they admire in a business way, let's just say,
Mhm.
uh, how they got there is never what you expected,
Yeah.
ever,
Yes.
right? Um, and so I think that many people would like the roadmap to be I le- they'd like to know what the roadmap is, and it's probably much different than what they think it was. Go to school,
Oh, no,
do
no
hard work.
question.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's and capturing those stories of, whatever, like, how I built this, right? That, that the NPR series or whatever.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, it's always the stories,
it's always
right? And
stories.
and what we see so often, whether we sit with a family member or we sit with a rock star or whomever, and kind of say, and literally, this is a lot of times what we'll do. We will just hold that photo up or that document. We'll go, tell us about this.
Yeah,
And they will just talk. And the things that they remember because they haven't thought about it.
yeah, yeah,
And then all comes in and these little things that people have never heard before. And that nature of that story, and then how it's shared with a future business student or it's shared with a fan,
yeah.
right? It all, starts in that same,
Or your
um,
grandkids, like in the family office, we were talking about Jerry Jones and all that. Uh, I'm never going to sit down and tell my granddaughter who's, 10 about all the horror I lived through to build businesses until she later in life when she wants to hear about that.
right.
But if you actually had a recording of the like chapters of your life, it would be fun for them to look at that, whether you're here or not, right?
Yeah. So you have to do it now. So for
Yeah,
somebody like Jerry, right, it's
yeah,
like he's got kids and grandkids and legacy and this and his building, whatever. And I mean, just countless things. So it's really, how do you pull these things in sort of a methodical way, not to, again, overwhelm, the client, because but it's like, all right, we just want to show you a few things.
yeah.
And then we're gonna come back, in a few weeks and maybe ask you to do something else. But most clients, our experience, they love it because it
That
just
sounds
brings
like fun to
these
me. Like I
memories.
would enjoy that, right? If
Yeah.
I was the client, right?
Yeah.
That would,
Sure. Because you hadn't thought about it. You hadn't seen these photos.
yeah,
We've had clients where they've said, "Where'd you find this photo?" Be like, in a
yeah,
mismarked box in your basement behind, like, washing machine. Like,
right.
that's where we found it. They're never going to look.
Yeah,
They're never going to look, right? So for us, we will do it. And again, be like, we got it. We
yeah.
got this.
We've
Don't
done
worry
this
about
before. Yeah, yeah, I like that. Meaning, I think that that gives the level of comfort saying that, oh, we'll figure it out. No, we've done this before. Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
super
No,
cool.
nobody wants this to be their first rodeo where we're digging through
Yeah,
priceless artifacts in history and fragile documents and,
yeah,
textiles that have not been preserved, or there have been bugs or mold, or I mean, literally we have seen it all.
I'm sure. Yeah, before we wrap things up, is there anything that you want to talk about that you're about to do or wish you could do or in the pipeline to do that's a little different or interesting? And It knows okay. I was just wanted to give you an opportunity
Yeah,
to
I
talk
mean,
about it.
this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but like everything we're doing is interesting, and I
Yeah.
think what we are being asked to do more and more, much bigger things for clients because the back when we were first starting, it was just digging through some boxes and doing basic archiving, and has evolved to everything from digital and physical experiences and all the stuff I talked about before. And now it's just getting on a much bigger scale around um, brand extension, brand preservation, brand connectivity and the client as a brand and how do you look at that? So there's some things we're very excited about, certainly in the sports, side, for sure. But I think it's, going back to the very beginning of the conversation, at the heart of this is this relationship between content and audience, right? That's it. So for us, I mean, if, and this is not a sales pitch whatsoever, but if anybody wants to talk about it, needs guidance, needs thoughts, whether they want to work with us or not, always happy to share best practices and learnings because sometimes that little thing about, hey, you really should take this and do this with this or preserve it this way can make the difference between somebody's legacy being preserved or not.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think Bill Belichick could use your help. Uh,
Bill could use, yes, Bill could use our help. I mean, that's I think he's dealing with obviously a bunch of very interesting things at the moment that are distracting from him, focus on his skills as one of the greatest coaches in the world. But that guy has lived a life.
oh, no doubt. I take responsibility for his behavior in terms of who he's decided to spend time with and the age gap. Largely because I love saying this and putting it on tape so it's archived forever. So I met Bill in Nantucket. A friend has a brewery up there, and he met me and my 33 year to my junior girlfriend at the time. Maybe it was 30 at the time. And so he's taking a page out of my book and decided he was going to have a young girlfriend. And I think I had some influence on him.
Okay, well, look,
There's a story
something.
for you right there.
I think it's amazing, and at the end of the day, like you're responsible for your own happiness, and if it makes you happy, and if it makes Bill happy, he should be
Totally.
happy.
Yeah. I
Be
tell you,
happy.
that is a true story. But what was really interesting is that Mary is a uh, athletic trainer by training, and she loved meeting Bill Belichick and having a super casual conversation with him because she loves sports and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, besides me making up a story about him taking a page out of my book, it was really cool for him to chat with her. And
Yeah, and that's amazing. I mean, he is a genius.
yeah,
I mean, it's just absolutely brilliant and and again, like he's led an extraordinary life. I mean, this is sort of what we were just talking about. He is
yeah,
somebody who's absolutely led an extraordinary life and continues to.
yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been super cool. Really appreciate it. You're fascinating stuff.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
fun
you.
to get
Well,
up every day, I'm sure. Yeah.
it is fun. Some days it is work, but
Yeah, yeah. That's
it is
okay.
also fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love talking about this, and again, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you. And you always have, and all my conversation with you asked really, really great, insightful, interesting questions. So it's fun for me, and I again, it's just terrific to spend time with you and your listeners.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words and thank you to our listeners. And as I always say, thank you for spending with us only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. Thanks, Brad. Really
Thank
appreciate it. Okay,
you.
take care.